all-powerful, starting with the elderly wolf uncle. Chapter 61. Syllable. Both hands clasped Clark's falling fist. Although the current Clark has surpassed Xianxia in strength, it is far from reaching the point where one hand is stronger than the latter's strength in both hands. Followed by, Clark saw that his arm was controlled, his eyes narrowed slightly and his brows were furrowed, but then his eyes widened instantly. And his handsome face was illuminated with a layer of red light at the same time. How is it possible? He looked at Chen Tian, whose eyes were shining red in front of him, and he was shocked in his heart. Chen Tian's previous strength was stronger than his own. The new ability he just stimulated, how could Chen too? Seeing this scene, Clark's pupils trembled wildly, and his eyes were full of incomprehension. Rumble. Unfortunately, Clark didn't wait for any answer. Two blazing red beams exuding majestic power suddenly burst out from Chen Tian's eyes. Terrifying heat wave rolling. Those two huge red energy beams, like torrents of turbulence, exuded earth-shattering power, roaring and bombarding Clark's chest. It has to be said. Clark, who had just awakened his hot vision, became the first person to taste the power of this trick. He felt the blazing terrifying heat, and the infusion bombarded himself, and the huge pain made him can't help but cry out. In addition, the power contained in it is also amazing. Clark was directly frozen by this bombardment, lost control and fell to the earth. Rumble. The entire ground shook because of his impact, as if greeting a meteorite hitting the ground collapsed, and a large area of trees was destroyed. A thick fog of dust rose into the sky, like wolf smoke. Why? Clark covered his chest and slowly stood up, shook his head to shake off the head full of sand, and looked up at Chen Tian, who was floating in the air. His eyes were full of shock. He reacted with hindsight. Chen Tian not only simply possessed superpowers, but the other party's ability was exactly the same as his. Whether it is strength, heat vision, or floating in the terrifying flight ability 0, it is just like your own replicator, no different. Clark looked at Chen Tian, who was condescendingly looking at him in midair, and frowned to question what was going on. However, as soon as he opened his mouth, the words did not have time to come out. Rumble. See midair. Chen Tian's figure suddenly flashed and became blurry. In the endless strong air current, he flashed in front of Clark in an instant. The latter did not have time to react. It has already been hit by Chen Tian's brutal and terrifying power. Rumble. Clark's body was as if it had been bombarded head-on by a 10,000-ton mountain, and it was directly knocked out. Boom. The whole person smashed into the mountain not far away again. I saw it in the blink of an eye. Because of Clark's impact, that mountain instantly spread into dense cracks. Meanwhile, there were countless pieces of earth and rubble, collapsing down from the mountain, thick dust and fog rising into the sky, constantly rolling around. Directly covering the surrounding area of several kilometers. The ground shook violently, as if an extremely terrifying earthquake had occurred, and huge cracks that were invisible spread out. Chen, you tell me, why? Quote. Clark, who was deeply trapped in the mountain, suddenly flew out and waved his big hand. Suddenly, a huge amount of airflow was pulled by him, flowing to one side, driving the surrounding air to form a violent wind. The huge dust and fog that occupied thousands of miles were easily blown away by this gust of wind, and all the trees in the surrounding woods were blown by the fierce wind, shaking and shaking. And Chen Tian also appeared in front of Clark's eyes again. The latter saw that his expression was calm, as if everything that happened now was in his plan. The anger in Clark's heart grew stronger. He felt that this teenager, who he only met yesterday, not only did not hesitate to kill the killer when facing the enemy. And there are many secrets to hide from themselves. This kind of concealment between friends made Clark very unhappy. Including him, he also realized that from the very beginning, Chen Tian seemed to have some purpose in mind, deliberately provoking himself. However, after fighting him again, he activated new abilities and increased his strength to a higher level. Chen, you tell me, who the hell are you? Clark wrinkled his brows and asked in a loud voice. Then, next second, rumble. Clark suddenly exerted his strength, and the mountain that was already covered with cracks and crumbling under his feet burst directly. He instantly crossed a distance of thousands of meters and flashed in front of Chen Tian. The questions in his heart continued to pour out, like adding fuel to the fire, pouring out the anger in Clark's heart more and more. He was ready to teach Chen Tian a good lesson, then dig into the other party's secrets, and finally put him in prison to reflect his mistakes. Rumble. Thoughts flash away like lightning. Clark's power also burst out at this time. The superpower that has evolved is directly stimulated by him to the extreme. When a punch was thrown, a sound barrier even faintly appeared on the fist. Because of this, when Clark slammed into Chen Tian's body, the latter hadn't even heard the sound of breaking the air. At the same time, even if it was clear that Clark punched, he couldn't react at all. Rumble. Chen Tian was hit hard by a punch, huge power. Row is that he felt that his breath was stagnant, and his body shook. The whole person instantly flew upside down, and instantly slammed into a constantly rising mountain in the distance. 0. Ask for flowers. Thundered. Suddenly, a mountain instantly cracked into dense cracks under the impact of the terrifying power carried by Chen Tian's figure. Lose your shape and collapse with a bang. In a violent shaking sound that was stronger than before, the shattered mountain turned into countless rock fragments and fell down, shaking the mountain. One after another, the impact spread out, rolling up the dust in the sky and turning into dust mist. But swallow the surrounding trees in an instant. The terrifying cracks of the Dao Dao cracked out on the ground. It's a big super, just a little bit of potential, it has grown to such a point. Chen Tian bathed in the thick dust and fog around him, stroking the position where his chest was hit by Clark, and muttered to himself. The clothes on his upper body exploded directly into pieces when he was hit by Clark. The smooth lines of the body are not exaggerated, and each well-proportioned and full muscle is exposed to the air. If you can get close, you will find that Chen Tian has fair skin at this time, but the skin on his chest is slightly red. Even if the ability of the iron body has been copied, the place where it is hit is still faintly painful 0, but think about it. Chen Tian's mind suddenly appeared the deeds of Dachau. He smiled and said to himself, after all, this guy can become an existence that nuclear weapons cannot solve in just 20 years. How can it not be terrifying? Boom, one by one. Outside the dust and fog, Clark in midair waved his big hand, as if unveiling a curtain, directly fanning out a violent wind. And the thick dust curtain in front of him was instantly blown away by the wind. He looked at Chen Tian, who was standing on the ground with a smile, and his brows frowned slightly. 0. Now can you tell me, who are you?